It's Saturday morning in Italy, and you're listening to the Magic Towns Italy podcast.
Happy Saturday, everyone. Welcome back to the Magic Towns Italy podcast. This week we have a special interview with a man who, with his family, decided to uproot his existence and move to one of the less known parts of Italy, a remote corner of Abruzzo, where almost single-handedly he's trying to revive the local community. He's telling us all about his adventures in terms of integration, how his family is doing with school and work. Also, how he himself finds it is like to work with Italians on a day-to-day basis. Enjoy listening to the interview with Joe Reagan.
We moved abroad in 2016. We initially moved to Ireland with only 2 kids, and then we had 2 kids born in Ireland, and we lived there for about almost 8 years. But I don't know if you're familiar with the situation in Ireland, but it's a bit of a housing crisis going on. Like, the cost of housing keeps getting more expensive, rents, everything like that. The young people are still leaving because it's difficult for them to get up on the ladder. And for us, it was like, it always felt like the goalposts were moving in terms of trying to buy a house. Okay, they changed the rules again. We had to start over again. So we just sort of resigned ourselves to renting. But during COVID, we saw one of the 1-year house marketing schemes kind of, and we're like, oh, let's look at that. And we're like, okay, that's a bit too much work for us. We want something that's move-in ready. And that's when we started looking at different places for houses. And we looked particularly in Abruzzo because that's where my wife's family's from. We still have cousins that live outside of Pescara. We found the house, purchased it in 2023, and we moved in September of 2023. So we've been here almost 3 years. So we found our town and started to learn about our town and the history. And my kids obviously speaking Italian now. And like today we just had a transumanza. You know the transumanza? So they had a procession and the kids were dressed up as shepherds, and they performed. They did like songs and they read some poetry and read about like what the transumanza is about. It's just kind of telling the life of how people used to live in Abruzzo. So that was like a great experience, but you're learning about how things have changed here, and you can see it with the town is shrinking because there was just a report that was put out by the Diocese of Trevento. So we're kind of together with like the Molise region that's really close to us because we're right in the valley on the Trina River. So all these places are facing like a 50% population decline in the last 35 years. So the diocese is like, this is like a cry for help by them. Because they're the ones administrating to the people and dealing with all the problems, because they're saying how some services have disappeared over the years, but the church has always been there, and they're hearing from the people and they're dealing with all the issues. And so they're just trying to be the voice of like what's actually happening in our region.
I actually find your history resonates a lot with mine because we've been in a lot of the same countries. My kids are American, Irish, Italian. And I have 4 of them. So I am curious how you immigrated to Italy. I know you were in Ireland for a long time. Did you move to Italy as a permanent resident by porting over your residency?
No, my wife has Italian passport, so do my kids. So they're dual citizens. I was a permanent resident of Ireland, and that actually helped me because I had my permanent residency when I transferred to do the paperwork for my Carta di Soggiorno. They're like, oh, you're already kind of an approved long-term EU resident. So I'm on the system, so to speak, right? Whereas I wasn't new to coming to Europe. So that helped me. But since my wife had the Italian passport, even with my kids being born in Ireland, we just stuck with the Italian passport because it was easier, because we have the American passport and the Italian one. So we just got them that. It just was instant. We just went to the embassy in Dublin and they got it. We just had the paperwork. So that's how we were always able to stay. And we used that. My wife obtained Italian citizenship from her grandfather. So, yeah.
The reason why I'm asking is that, it's interesting what you said about depopulation and the fact that towns are emptying out. So we actually spent a lot of time doing research on that. And one of the things we've been doing was a survey of expats, and we found that, especially among Americans, interestingly, the biggest barriers are the lack of English in the public administration, the driver's license, changeover requirement, the fact that you have to,
Yes.
I mean, I know 70-year-old ladies that have to do the driver's test again in Italian. And of course, the whole visa kind of quota system that makes it very complicated. So I'm not surprised to know that you found things easier as a spouse of a EU citizen and, of course, as a permanent resident. So I always ask this question.
Yeah, like the driver's license, I had to get it. It's the same rule in Ireland because it's all EU countries. If after a year of residency, you have to transfer your license to an Irish driver's license. So I went through the tests and all that in Ireland. It was just easier because it was in English, So that's, I guess, not to say it's a hack to get through the system because you still have to be there and do it. It's just made it easier for me because I've already been here for a while.
Of course. And did you guys discuss when I wasn't there why specifically you chose Abruzzo and why that, corner of the woods in Abruzzo?
My wife's family's from Abruzzo. They live in a small town outside of Pescara. They're about an hour and 20 minutes away. So we went for a place that we liked. And my wife did an ample amount of research as well in this town. She was like, okay, it's got a school. We have a medical center. We have a bank and all those things you need in a town, because sometimes, like a town near me that's got 100 people doesn't have anything. They come to my town. It's
Dead.
it's dead. Yeah. And everybody here says that too about the town. They're like, oof, they do the sign of the cross when they refer to it. But it's almost like, this town still has a lot. It still has a lot of life left. When we had just a little festa last night for the Festa della Repubblica in our piazza, we had food trucks and music, and it was full of people. And it was people from all around the other towns that were in our town for the party, which was nice. So it had a lot of those amenities. It checked the boxes. And then also we did a bit of like social media stalking. You're looking on Instagram. Are people posting here? Are things happening? Because some towns, how it is. I suppose there's nothing going on. You don't see anything on social media. Maybe the businesses aren't updated on Google. So you do a little cyber stalking and you find out if they have what they say they have, or, what's on paper.
How do you find the transition from, so you went into 3 steps, right? I know you've also been to some other countries, like you've been to South Africa, but
that was me in my youth. That was no kids. That was me doing it.
All right.
Yeah.
Free agent.
Free agent. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But how did you find the transition US? I believe you lived in Brooklyn, right? As well.
Yeah. That was,
Yeah.
well, I could go a little bit side story with my time in South Africa and my time in Brooklyn. I actually, do you know the Capuchin Franciscans? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I actually I did volunteer work with them in South Africa. There was a peace program started by an Irish friar. And I worked with that in Pretoria. And then when I went back to the States, I got a job, but then I discerned with them. I was doing like retreat weekends and stuff with the guys from that group, and joined them temporarily. I joined them for about a year. And that's when I was living in Brooklyn. I was living in a friary in Brooklyn. I wasn't like in a hipster place. It was like in a rough area, but it was a friary. And I worked at a soup kitchen, and there was 6 or 7 other guys in it's called a postulancy group. It's your first year before you put on the robe. You can still wear civilian clothes. So I did that. And eventually I was like, you're doing a year of prayer and study, and I was working in a soup kitchen. And eventually it became clear to me that it wasn't for me, that I wanted a family. So I said goodbye and left. But there's no problem. You just tell them I'm going to leave. And they're like, okay. And my brother always tells a story that when he came to get me, my brother's a police officer in my hometown. He said how our place was like, like a fortress, because it's in a rough area. There's, barbed wire around it, and it's a little friary, and he had to go in through a gate. And he's like, I felt you were like in prison, and I was springing you out of prison, is what he said.
So how did the jump to Europe happen?
So my wife and I first got together, we were always talking about, do we want to stay forever in the US? We're interested in travel. We honeymooned in Ireland and Scotland, and she knew that I traveled a lot before we got married, and we're always interested in like a life outside the US. I remember there was a moment where sitting having dinner with my oldest son, was only like an infant, because I remember he was still in a car seat, like sitting at the table. And it was one of the bigger shootings happened in the US. It was the Sandy Hook, which was in Connecticut. Yeah. And that one said to us, like, if that happened and then like nothing really changed, like they're still happening and there's still been horrific ones since, we're kind of like, do we really want to deal with that? You hear about active shooter drills. Like I used to just have fire drills, oh, if there's a fire, this is what you do. Now they do fire drills and shooter drills. Like, and my kids have thankfully never experienced that. And that was for us, we just like, do we want a future for our children in that environment? So that was one of the things, and we wanted a different life.
And how long after did you move to Ireland?
Let me think. It's 10 years now. We've been married on coming up in 15 years. So my oldest just turned 4. My second son was about a year and a half. So it's about 5.5 years into our marriage. So we're still fairly young and into it. And then my wife was pregnant with our third son. She had him a few months after we got to Ireland. And then my daughter was born like 2 years later. So yeah, we spent more time abroad now than we have, I suppose, together in the United States. Even my kids, like my oldest still remembers some things, But for now, it's like my second oldest doesn't remember anything from the States.
That's just incredible. You mentioned what happened with Sandy Hook. I was in the US at the time.
Mhm.
Um, about a year later,
Mhm.
they shot one of my neighbors in front of my doorstep in
Jeez.
Brooklyn. And that to us was an eye-opening moment. For a European, that kind of stuff is just unthinkable. I just never had gotten my head around to someone being shot in front of my door. And that was the moment
Yeah.
we said, hell no. So
Yeah.
back we go. Back we go.
It's eye-opening, I assume, for you when you have that, because I suppose when you're growing up into it, like my family is like both my grandfathers were police officers, my uncle, my cousin, my brother. So you kind of grow up, not to say around a certain amount of violence, but you're used to like them dealing with criminals, criminality, and those things that happen. But you hear it's getting worse and worse in terms of like the stories they're telling, and that's something too. Eventually, you're like, when you move out of it and you go, well, this is actually not normal. In Europe or Ireland, like I barely saw the police in Ireland. When they needed to be there, they were there. But compared to America, like you go around every corner and you see a cop. It's such a different feeling.
And the guards are very laid back. I mean,
Oh
even
yeah,
as you hear policemen go, it's like, yeah, the guards
yeah,
are more like people you find at the pub. They're on the
yeah.
streets.
It's the I like to say it's the sure you'll be grand attitude. Like I had a great moment so during COVID, they had like lockdowns in Ireland, and I was like a sales manager, still had to go out to like the supermarkets, like Dunn stores and
Yeah, yeah,
Tesco.
yeah.
So I'd go out there, and I actually had a note from my company that I was like working because we're essential workers because we're stocking supermarket shelves. And I remember I was near Tala, you're outside of Dublin. It's a bit of a more working class neighborhood. It's so like they had the where you're supposed to go, and this Garda was like shouting at this lady. He's like, "You're going too far. You're only supposed to go 5 kilometers from your house," and he's basically telling her f off back home. And he gets to me. He's like, "Please tell me you have a good excuse." Yeah, and I was like, "I work for Coke." He's like, "Oh Jesus." He's like, "You got a drink back there for me?" Like he was just like just going from like being really serious to just like I'll just tell have a laugh and just taking the tension out. I was like, sorry, I was like, I only have Coke and water. I can't help you out with I'm sure you need a beer or something. I can't help you.
It's never very far in Ireland anyway.
Yeah, yeah. So it's that attitude I think is great though. And I think for us, the Irish attitude of it's so much more relaxed than it is in America. And I think that prepared us well for the transition to Italy on how the culture works and how things work here.
How have you found that? I mean, did you speak Italian at the time of the move? How
Nope.
prepared were you?
Our kids had a tutor for about 3 years. But for us, we kind of knew the basics. And thankfully, we did have an English speaker here who was able to help us like navigate a lot of the bureaucracy. So she's from here, but she studied in England. She's a fluent English speaker. And since they wanted us to stay here, they're like, you have 4 kids? That'd be amazing if you could come and move to our town. We need kids. It'll help our school. And she literally went with us to get to the enrollment for the kids. And we signed it up and she translated for us. And that was like our first few weeks. But having somebody like that on your side is definitely beneficial.
Also, everything is in Italian, right? I mean,
Oh, yeah,
did you
yeah.
ever find public workers and office workers in a town hall that speak good English?
I only found last year, I did, San Carlo, Patatini.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
worked for them. I worked for them for the summer. And over time, people would just realize with my accent that I was an English speaker. And so I found like 4 or 5 people who were fluent English speakers through just realizing I spoke it. And it was just funny because we'd have conversations in English. Everybody else was like, "What are you talking about?" I think they enjoyed finding somebody else. Like one of the bar owners, like studied university in Baltimore, and we talk about baseball, like just random stuff like
So
that.
random.
Yeah, there's another guy who worked at a butcher shop. His name was Gino, but he grew up in England and he had English accent, but then he was perfect Italian. He'd been there for 40 years. So it's just things like that you find over time. But it was also helpful because they were good customers and it also helped me transition well because going from not speaking Italian that well and just getting thrown into a job where I had to do it all the time, all day, it was helpful to have a little break and sometimes, let my brain rest.
Oh, of course. So you are one of the few examples of an American, actually probably the only one I ever met, that has gone to work for an Italian company.
Yeah, I've done a few actually. My wife used to be better than me at Italian, but my wife still works all the time, like remotely for a company in Ireland, and she only speaks English all day. So me out all the time speaking Italian, I went like way far ahead of her on my understanding of Italian. And now she looks to me, what are they saying? Whereas before I was like, what are they saying?
How are you finding working in Italy with the Italians? There's a lot of stereotypes, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, there for sure. I think coming back from America where it's like go, 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 hustle, 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 it probably blew people's minds that like in the middle of the day when I was working the job last summer, you're not delivering because everybody's closed from like 1 o'clock to like 4, right? So it's almost sometimes if I was really busy, I'd have to just stop working for like 3 hours until everybody opened back up. And that would blow people. "Ah, why are they closed? They're losing money. Like that. A lot of Americans have that idea, like, well, it's just how they operate here, and so you adapt to
Do you
that.
find that irritating, or how do you come to terms with it?
Just come to terms with it. Like when you're in August, when you're really busy, you like wish some of them were open just because it make your day so much easier because it's bananas how busy it was because you have all the festivals, your Ferragosto, everybody's on holiday, and I was getting calls like, Joe, I need you here, I need this, and I'm like, I can't go to all these towns in one day because one of them's an hour away and this one's 20 minutes away. You got to do what you can. So some thankfully you could call them and say, can I come after hours? And they'd meet you, in the middle of the day if you made an arrangement. So it was just longer days, but I mean, the way they work is it's commission. So you got more. August was my like the month I got paid the most. So you busted your butt, but you got paid for it. The worst part though is halfway through August, my air conditioning broke in my van. So the hottest month,
You don't want that in the middle of August.
oh, but it actually helped me. It's just like the language. I got acclimated. I just drove with the windows down, and I remember some of my customers being like, "Joe, take it easy, like
Take
piano
it easy,
piano,
man.
have a drink." Somebody was like, "Have a beer," and that's normal too. Americans would be like, "You're having a beer?" So things like that, where you just like you can do that, and that's a different cultural thing versus America.
It sounds like you really are seeing the positive of things. And I sense a lot of appreciation for the fact that you have been able to integrate, perhaps
Yeah.
more than you thought you would in such a short time.
I think so because like in Ireland, there was no language barrier, but you still sometimes struggle to really make good friends. But here, even with the language barrier, I still find that people are much more open. Like I say it to my wife all the time, my social calendar has never been busier than it has in Italy because there's always something. Like today, when the kids had the Transumana play, that like the kids who are graduating elementary school, they had beers and they had prosecco, and you're like, "Well, you're at a school event and there's alcohol," and they were giving me. I was like, "I'll have water," and they're like, "Joe, you're not having prosecco?" I was like, "Not today," like, but
Yeah,
that stuff's
just
normal.
for the
Yeah,
people who listen to this, they don't give the beer and the prosecco to the kids.
yes. No, no, that's for the adults. It's for the adults.
Just in case you misunderstand.
Yeah,
No, but the
but
parents do partake.
yeah, yeah, but it's just funny because those sort of things here, you just think that's normal now, right? But
Yeah.
if that happened in the States, you think, wow, that's just completely weird and strange, totally illegal or something. Yeah, and back to the integration, I find that even my son had a travel soccer club every Sunday morning. We're playing for the town near us, and the parents would go out to get a coffee in the morning. In some of the towns I knew from work, and like, and it was kind of funny that sometimes me as like the American immigrant knew these towns better than some of the local Italians because we were in one called Castle Bordino, and I was like, they're like, "Where's the town center?" I was like, "Come on, come with me. I'll show you." You know what I mean?
You're the
Like,
local guide.
and they're kind of funny. And then ironically, like 5 minutes later, I ran into the guy who worked at San Carlo there, and he's like, "Oh, Joe," and he gave me like a high five. And they're like, they just think I don't know anybody, and the next thing you know, I'm talking to people that I know from previously. So I think that surprises a lot of people that I know so many people. So
I see a career as a local politician coming up for you. I was going to ask about your mission in Italy. You have a lot of
yeah.
followers. Do you feel like you have a mission?
Well, for me, I think so. Like what I did was when we moved here, I took a step back. I'm not working like as much as I have been because my wife has a good stable paying job and she has to travel to Ireland like once a quarter. So I was like, okay, I got to take care of the kids. I still can do a lot of different things, a bit of entrepreneurial things where I'm finding people help find properties, and people are interested in that. And then I started pulling back layers of different things that are happening here. People come to me once like, "Oh, Joe, can you do a video for my house?" They have it listed with a realtor, but it's been for sale for 5 years and they haven't heard anything from the realtor. So I've done some videos on TikTok and they sort of got some traction where people were coming to see the houses. And eventually one of the houses was purchased through the realtor, but they saw my video to get them there. So once they saw that that worked, people just randomly show up to my door and knock on it and say, "Hey, can you do a video of my house?" and stuff like that. So that sort of developed. And then with that, getting people here, you probably know it as well. A lot of the incentives are focused on retirees. You have the 7% tax. But if you look at my area, the whole area has had a 50% population decline. The 3 towns near us, all their schools have closed. There's no supermarket, there's no shop, there's nothing, So that's the future that could happen to my town, Chilenza. So I want to just say, let's not let that happen. Some of those houses that I'm sharing, not to say I'm holding or gatekeeping that they should go to certain people, but I want them to go to families. We're right in nature, sitting on top of a hill, and there's great hiking trails and all these things. So that does appeal to some people. So I'm just trying to say, hey, if you're looking for that, we have it, but also we have a community that needs more people with kids, and I have been successful, sort of. One of the guys from my town, he moved away, and my videos have helped kind of influence him to come. He's going to buy a house back here in town. He has 2 kids that are going to enroll in school. So to me, it's like my first little win, So like I saw him yesterday because what I heard was our middle school has enough kids, but because it's so small, they're going to put all together in one class. But one of my sons told me that if his son, who's supposed to be in 6th grade, enrolls now, they'll split the classes into 2, which is, I think, is better instead of having all the kids together. So I told him that. He got in touch with the school district, got it sorted, and that will help the school. So it's
So you
just
save the school in another way. You know what you're saying really resonates. There's a lot of these gems around Italy, and the country is so big, people don't realize because it looks so small on a map, but it's actually enormous. It's the size of California, but it's
Yeah.
very densely populated.
Yeah.
So there are thousands of these towns, and there's also a lot of towns that are past saving. But what you are focusing on is a community that, by all accounts, can still be turned around, and it feels like you've embraced that. There's one thing I wanted to ask you last, which is a question that comes up a lot. I assume that your kids go to state school. You don't have private schools. Do you?
State school, yes.
So do mine. How do you find the transition was, or what has been your experience with the state school system?
It was really good from the start because when we moved, the kids weren't fluent in Italian. So the school came up with a plan to get them the extra Italian language learning and grammar learning. And then we had a WhatsApp group with the teachers. So if there's an issue, we kind of were in good communication with them. We would meet with them probably that first year once a month and just talk about any problems that were coming up. They knew it was important that the kids caught up. They felt like they're part of the class. They now all fluently speak Italian.
And what do you think was like the biggest benefit for your family and your kids?
I think for them, I know one of my kids was every day in Ireland, he'd be like, I don't want to go to school. I don't want to go to school. We literally had to almost like drag him to school every day. First, it was difficult for a few weeks, and then something switched. And then he was the first one ready. He had his scrim, ready to go. And he's like out the door, up to the bus. And we're like, who is this kid? This is not the kid we knew. So I think it's the socialization. They had to learn the language and they really had to like catch up. And it was almost like throwing them into the deep end. So for me, that's the biggest part I've seen is that transition. And probably then having the language and being like, wow, I speak Italian and English, and that confidence that it probably gave them. I think that was probably the biggest thing that I saw as a parent.
So what is next for you now?
Well, I'm going to still keep talking about getting people to my town. It's not just get people here, it's also keeping them. And how do you keep them is have them integrate. If I get my goal of 3 to 5 families, which is my goal, I'll do my best to say, hey, if you need a hand, I've been there. Since I've been through it, I know the bottlenecks that you're going to have or problems you're going to face. Longer term, I think I just keep talking about Abruzzo because I think it's a great place to be and a beautiful area. Everybody wants to go to the ones that everybody goes to Rome and Amalfi, and there's other places you can discover, and people won't know about it unless you talk about it. And I'm trying to then actually promote local businesses as well. We just went to one locally on Saturday. There's a hotel near us to do a pasta making course. So I'm going to do a video and share that because people are like, Joe, what do you do in the area? What are the things to do? And not to say we're trying to get overrun with tourists. We just want a bit more. It's more focused on slow tourism. Maybe they want to harvest olives. Maybe they want to make pasta. I'll try to get them to come and experience that.
And that's a surprising thing about Italy, that even in smaller communities, there is a surprising amount of stuff to do. And it's just because people don't know it. It's a tree falling in the forest. It still exists. There is so much, but unless you make it available for people to understand that it is there, everyone will keep going to the same places. And frankly, that's why we started working on this, because we had to against that.
Don't show up in the town, like a quiet town like mine, at like 3 PM and go, where's everybody? They're like, well, they're having lunch. They're on their break. You hear that a lot. Yeah, it's things like that. You're like going that you see the routines that people do. 8 AM, we have a fruit and vegetable van that's around. You see they go to the bar for a coffee. They see their friends. They go to the shop. Everybody has their daily schedule. And if you come in and not realize that it's a totally different one, how people operate, especially in the summertime, you're not going to really have the full experience. You got to come in with that open mind as well and go, okay, what are the locals doing? Let me follow that. And then you'll find those experiences, which you mentioned, because you go to the bar and you have a coffee and people go, who are you? Where are you from? And you get those and you meet people versus showing up at like 1 o'clock when it's closing and nobody's there.
Especially as we get into the summer,
Yeah.
knowing what the daily routine of Italians is the difference between having an absolutely awful time, showing up at restaurants where they no longer serve food, going around the baking hot hours of the day when everyone is in bed, because they go to bed for a couple of hours, it's just so hot, they close the windows, etc. And then you go around and it's like, okay, this is like a ghost town. There's tumbleweeds going around. No, it isn't. Just
No.
people have this as a downtime because outside you have to be crazy to go. Right?
Yeah.
So once you learn that, everything makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, it's like even now you still like, well, on the weekend we go out for like a night on a Sunday, and some people will hang around at a certain point, like after 7:38, you'll start seeing people just disappearing because they're going home for dinner, but they could be back at 9:30. You get that window where you're like, oh, there's nobody around, and just those small observations will take you a long way. And just sometimes it's like take the hint. Everybody else is leaving, you leave, and you come back. Those things. Again, it's just awareness of what people are doing.
That's right. Follow the locals.
Yeah.
This is the final question, which is
Mhm.
like, what kind of people you think would love moving there? We should probably think twice before making the move.
I suppose people who you got to be a bit, I suppose, industrious and like adventuresome, because I think if you're expecting things to like drop in your lap, it's not going to happen. You got to go out there and find stuff. You mean like as I said, with like my job last summer, I met so many different people from all around, and you can and see the same thing happening in our town and all these other towns that I went to, with a few exceptions. But like you got to be able to get out there. If you're expecting people to speak English, they're not going to. So you got to adapt and learn Italian and put yourself in a situation that is uncomfortable. You have to be uncomfortable, honestly, because that's one of the things I kind of reminded myself when I first got here. I was like, you've been here before, you feel nervous, you feel a bit scared, but you're scared because you care, because you don't want to, you're like, oh, I'm going to embarrass myself by saying it wrong. That's okay. Like, that's how we learn. You just forget, I think, when you're kids, you don't have that, I suppose, shame that you do as an adult, like that you make mistakes and you're like, oh, I'm an idiot. That's how we learn. You got to make the mistakes and say the verb in the wrong tense or say it masculine instead of feminine. You learn that. You learn those things over time. You just got to do it and experience it. And you don't do that by, I suppose, hiding away. You got to get out there, and especially with Italians, it's a very warm culture, open culture. I think you just got to get out there, and they're just like, "Where are you from? Oh, cool! Like, it's glad you chose here." And I always find it's really funny in this area when you go to another town and they go, "Where do you live?" "Oh, I live here." And they're like, "Why didn't you choose our town?" And they're so like fiercely proud of their town,
You get
and
in trouble.
yeah, I'm like, "Well, sorry, I didn't know about you, before now." Like that sort of thing. It just always makes me chuckle, and they mean it in a nice way. Like I don't think they're like you should just uproot yourself and move to their town, but like they mean it in a way that like their town is great too, and they mean that in the nicest way, and they're very proud of where they're from, and they like it when people integrate and get out there.
People truly, truly appreciate that. It's a little bit like in Greece and other countries where you speaking the language and adjust a little bit is seen as an amazing feat, which you're going to be applauded for. So people should not be shy at all about trying.
But then you get the other layer of Italy where they start going, oh, you get the dialect though. You know what I mean? Like everybody's got their dialect. You think, oh, I learned Italian, and then you're like, what are they speaking? Oh, no, that's the dialect, and you're like, oh, don't get me started on that. It's fun though. It's a fun one to play, like to learn about as you get here. Like for ours, instead of C, they go she. It's like like things like that, and we kind of say a few of them just as a joke, but that's another layer as you expose yourself to it. You're going, whoa, what are they speaking? That sounds Italian, but it's not. And it's a funny one because you don't realize that till you're here, how that was or how that is in certain areas.
And you're going to realize that a lot when with your new Italian, which is very laden with local influences, you go to other parts of Italy and they're like, I know exactly where you lived for the past 5 years. I can tell exactly where your accent is.
An Italian friend of mine told my kids they have good, nice Abruzzo accents. I was like, I don't have that level of fluency to detect that yet.
But you will. Yeah.
And I just wanted to say before, because I know I'm looking for families, and I feel like there's a certain set of the population, the retirees. I'm not trying to say you guys aren't welcome, because it seems like a lot of people are like, oh, I want to go to your town, but it doesn't seem like you're looking for me. People need to put this in like the figures. We have 180 like abandoned or empty or vacant homes in my town. So if I just focus on 10 of those, it still leaves 170 other properties that are looking for love and attention. And I think people got to realize you pull back the layers, you realize how much we need people to be in these towns.
Absolutely. I don't think it was taken, at least from my perspective, it was not taken as I don't want retirees, but it is absolutely true that the country is facing a huge demographic crisis, especially in pockets. And you only fix that by bringing in families. What is really sad is that from our perspective, what we can do is shine the spotlight on nice parts of Italy that really need love and deserve to be lived in. What we cannot fix is how difficult it is for non-retirees to get the ability to do the country. You know this as a spouse of an EU citizen, you got graced like that. But for anyone that, an Australian couple that wakes up, a American couple that wakes up and don't have ancestry to move to Italy is an absolute nightmare. And what is really depressing is how conversely easy it is for them. There's very same people to move to the Netherlands or France, for instance. Italy has made it very difficult for people to immigrate. And I do hope that at some point, collectively, we're going to have enough of a voice to wake up the government, which is navel gazing, as it has always been Italy, independently of governments for many years, and build avenues for people to be able to move to Italy and be productive and come here with their family.
Just got to get maybe some more like incentives, or how there's it seems like certain incentives are focused on certain people. If they get focused on families, I think if there's more of those, that would be wonderful. As you said, if they focus further afield, hopefully one day they can wake up and change that.
Please go, Robin.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time, Joe. It's been a real pleasure having you over, and maybe we'll get to chat again in the future.
Definitely. Thank you.
That's it for this week on Magic Towns Italy. You can create a free account at magictowns.it and explore over 2,000 towns, including those offering the 7% tax scheme, as well as download dozens of expat guides. We have over 200 data points per town, more than Italy's Statistics Authority itself, covering everything from property prices to schools, healthcare, crime, and more. If you want full access to filters and unlimited searches, upgrade to Magic Towns Premium. Use the code podcast for 20% off an annual plan. Thanks for listening. Our next podcast will be live on Saturday at 9 a.m.